Hello, hello, and welcome to this episode of the Healer Roundtable discussions. Today, we are exploring a topic that many practitioners encountered, but are not always prepared for, and that is what happens when religious trauma walks into the session. Many clients arrive carrying experiences that are shaped by faith, doctrine, or even high control environments that continue to influence their experiences, their relationships with authority, safety, identity, and spirituality. The question for practitioners becomes how to hold that responsibly without stepping outside of our scope or unintentionally recreating the same dynamics that caused the harm. Joining me for this conversation are two guests who bring important perspectives to this topic. First, we have Shamika Chanel. She is a licensed professional counselor, supervisor, and the clinical director of Points of Origin Counseling Support and Education Center. Her work focuses on holistic mental wellness, identity development, and relational healing, integrative cognitive, narrative, and somatic approaches with a strong emphasis on how lived experience is held in both the mind and the body. We are also joined by Amanda Lynn Dietrich, a former counselor working with high-risk populations who now works as a transformation doula and soul guide. Amanda supports individuals through deep personal shifts using intuitive guidance, shadow integration, embodiment practices, and creative movement to help people reconnect with their authentic path. Thank you both for being here and for contributing to this conversation. As we begin this conversation, religious trauma is something that many practitioners, right, encounter, whether they expect it or not. Sometimes it shows up very clearly, and sometimes it's really woven in to how somebody is relating really to authority or to guilt or to even right like their own inner voice. So I do want to also preface that, this is about understanding how harm occurred within religious structures, not about criticizing faith or faith traditions in any way. We are here to really just share how this can affect people's nervous systems, belief systems, and sense of self. So as we begin, I would love to hear, in your experience, what are some of the early signals or signs that you've seen in a conversation with a client that religious conditioning might be already entering the session, even if the client isn't particularly stating that? Who'd like to chime in first?
I can go first. One of the biggest ways it energetically shows up is you can feel people, because I do a lot of energetics. So as soon as you talk about anything in the energetic realm, in the spiritual realm, people that have the religious programming, recovering Catholic right here. So my family, I witnessed it in my family, that are my clients. But you literally notice like the energetic shifts. Like I can literally see the auric field kind of close in, the body kind of tense up. Even those people that have been showing up to the work and the deconditioning for a length of time, because a lot of us as children, we don't really have a choice, right? We're kind of thrown into something. And even people that weren't raised in religious programming, let's be honest for a minute, it's all around us. If you consume any media, it's in the movies, it's everywhere. So even people that weren't avidly going to church, like you can literally see but then it looks like societal programming, right? But when certain things come up about inner freedoms, especially, or living your own life in your way, or showing up authentically, authentic expression of self, you can see people kind of closing in.
Mhm.
Because it's this fear-based, like, oh my God, but I have to toe the line. I have to show up this way, or that's not appropriate. That's not okay. That's not, well, I have to ask first, right? It's this kind of shell of being and always like something else. Like their authority and their power is outside of
Mhm.
themselves.
Mhm.
And you can literally, it doesn't even have to be something that comes out of somebody's mouth. It's just an energy when they come in, or you can see that they're constantly agreeing with you because in religious in religious sectors, we're taught from a very young age to pedestal. You're not enough, whereas how is as is. Somebody is always comes above you, right? Like be it your parents, be it your grandparents, be it the priest, for goodness sakes, of course. Like
Mhm.
the head of the church, 100%. So it's just like you're not enough, whereas how is as is. You're not deserving, you're not worthy, whereas how is as is. You can't even speak to God, whereas how is as is. You have to go through this other being. It's like a third party piece. There's no
Mhm.
personal empowerment piece that's in that. There is, but there's always hinging on something else. Yeah, it's it's definitely an energy that you can kind of see where, especially when you're talking about empowerment.
Mhm. And Amanda, you said a lot that we will probably continue to unpack throughout this entire episode because I imagine you touched on several different things that it'll make sense for us to talk about deeper. Even in thinking about, I wrote down a couple of things, like you said something about religious and societal conditioning. I definitely see that they are one and the same, right? In so many different ways, where even like, and you mentioned in the movies, they have people praying in movies, right? And then you go to an event and you're asked to bow your heads without anyone ever asking, what is your body that you pray to, right? They just assume that you pray, and they just assume that if you do not support them praying and bow your heads as well, then there's something wrong with you. So something that I see often is that the subconscious judgment, right? Where judgment happens and the body responds well before a word is said, right? And this lack of realization that there's a judgment of self that goes hand in hand with that. So I really like how you said this perception that the power of authority is outside self. Right? That is one of the biggest challenges with religious conditioning is and why identity is a factor in something that I preach about, right? Because if you have this expectation that your authority is outside of self, when do you ever believe in yourself? Right? When do you ever develop confidence in who you are outside of your physical appearance? Right? Because perceptually, that's the only thing that you can somewhat control, right? So that you end up where you have people who, and this is one of the signs, they don't see their own beauty, they don't see their own gifts, they don't see their own power because everything was given to them, right? By a higher power. And that is the perception. And that's what I find is what actually sends people into therapy is this expectation that the authority is not self.
Yeah. I really love this conversation because I was so excited when I knew that this is what we were going to talk about because both of you are hitting it right on the point is we don't always we don't realize at least as practitioners when I was first starting to work with clients I didn't realize like obviously I knew religious trauma was out there, right? I have my own but I wasn't expecting it to come out in the ways that it did because
Mm-hmm.
it's so ingrained and inweaved in who we believe we are that it's almost hard to really like separate that. And I, for a long time, never really called that out with clients as religious trauma because they had no concept. They were like, no, this is just who I am. That's not has nothing to do with that. And it's like, well, that's actually, you've been programmed or you've been conditioned to act this certain way. As you even said, Shamika, like walking into a space and automatically being commanded to bow your head, that like without ever asking or questioning like why do I have to do this, or I Amanda too left the Catholic Church, and as soon as you walk in, it's like you get that holy water and you make the sign of the cross. It's like, and if you don't do that, right, it's like people are kind of like you are required right as you walk into that space to already like give your power away to something external. And so that is part of our identity, right? That becomes part of who we are, especially if we were raised in that environment as a young child, or even some of the containers that are a little bit more extreme in well, a lot of people would say Catholicism is extreme, but there are others that may be considered more extreme and more cult like, right? Where you are taught to follow what this person says, right? Whether it's God or whether it's the person who is representing God, right? Like that's you have to do what they say. And so this starts to become who we are and how we show up and the ways in which we are interacting with others in our life. So have you noticed what language even people or your clients might start saying, like if a practitioner is like, well, how do I know if religious trauma, right, is showing up in my sessions? Like, what are some of the language or the words that you hear clients say that kind of gives you that inclination of like, oh, there's some religious trauma here?
The big one, whether it's in client sessions or whether it's in just conversations, when you're having like a preliminary conversation with somebody, is as soon as somebody says God fearing, it's on like Donkey Kong, you know, right away, because it's a big difference between somebody who believes in God, Creator, Buddha, Allah. And as soon as you put that word fearing, it's like, oh, okay, because that brings in the blind obedience. When you're talking, Daddy, that just made me totally think of like the blind obedience is the thing, right? That again, that authority outside of ourselves, that I am not enough, whereas as is I always need to be looking up to somebody else. I'm not worthy to get my channeling through Creator, God, Buddha, Allah. I need to get it through these other beings outside of myself. And it's like, yeah, as soon as you can see somebody's energy like kind of recluse, and when you're speaking to them as a soul being, it's like that kind of closes off and you're running it through all of this different conditioning.
Yeah.
And they're fearful in how they're showing up. It's almost like they're okay, processing it in this way, like, okay, is it okay for me to say this? Or they're justifying it. But I don't know, I'm going to make it right with Jesus. I'm going to do this. I'm like, whoa, 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 hold back. Just tell me what's coming from your heart. We can talk about that in a second. Just bring it back for a second. This is a judgment-free zone. It's just you and I. Oh, Jesus is in the room. Yes, Jesus is in the room, but Jesus in this room, it's non-judgment. It's a non-judgmental Jesus. Bring it up. But it's like this fear of like Big Brother hanging over the head. And if they do feel something, it's like, and then again with Catholicism, having to confess everything consistently. And I've had clients say to me, oh my God, I didn't even have anything to confess, so I made shit up.
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
therapy
Confessing
as
in a
well.
box to a man about what I've done or should have done or didn't do, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh my God, I'm trying to come up with things. And it's like, it's not about that. It's about grounding in and releasing that and letting that go. But you can, again, it's the energy of people all of a sudden going like this. And you can tell when you're sitting with somebody, with a client, energetically, if they've pedestaled you because you're a practitioner. And usually that's a good indicator. So it is an indicator of other traumas, obviously, not just religious trauma.
Right.
But that can absolutely be an indicator.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, and I personally haven't found that there's any one particular word. Like I hear Amanda saying God fearing, but we can stop at God. We can start and stop at God. And most of the times, and I do more sensorial, right, sensing than visual. But anytime they say the word God, I can sense the energy around their perception of that particular word. And so any word that's also in the Bible, anytime anyone's talking about religion, more times than not, they typically do not have a full picture about what they're talking about and have not studied other religions, right? Or other ways of thinking. And so those are some things that kind of send off, okay, so what type of God follower or non-follower am I talking to? Because there are so many different cuts to the same and different cloth, right? But anytime someone says God, like for instance, whenever I'm in communication, they say, do not call me God. They say that is a made up name. I'm not man or woman. I don't know who you're talking to. Are you talking to the one that they believe in? Are you talking, or you and I having a conversation? That's the pushback that I get.
Yes,
So
100% that.
yes. So
I
anytime,
call it the Bible God versus the true essence of beingness.
yes. So
And you hit it right on the head, Shamika. Like as soon as somebody says Bible, I'm like, here we go.
yeah, or God,
Here we go.
because that most people are not speaking about the true being. They are speaking about someone that was communicated to them, and they haven't done the research. They haven't done the investment. So literally, anytime anyone is having a surface conversation with me about it, I'm not truly present. Right. It's difficult to be truly present in that space when they are speaking of a God from the book,
Yeah.
because the divine being was never actually written about.
No.
Right? They just weren't. All right. What we get instead is a perception. So anytime that I'm hearing someone say anything that sounds like perception, like they haven't actually done their own investment, this is what we're talking about. There's more than likely some societal and religious conditioning that has occurred here. Right. And so what I typically do from there is assess whether or not they are fertile ground. Because if they are fertile ground, I'm open to a conversation. Right. And if they're not fertile ground, if they communicate like they are speaking in rhetoric and repeating from the book, that is a sign that there has been some religious trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd
Yeah.
100% agree. I think you guys are hitting it right on the head. I think in addition, I often will see black and white thinking, like it has to be this way or that way, is something that is really shows up because
Mm-hmm.
that's what a lot of the religions teach. It's this way, or like you're following Jesus, God, whatever, like you're following
Mm-hmm.
this, or you're going to hell, or you're evil, or
Mm-hmm.
you're doing the devil's work, whatever. Like you're on the other side, and so there's this black or white type thinking that we tend to see. You also pointed out too, both of you have kind of hinted at it already, and I'd love to move the conversation in this way, is around the obedience to authority figures, is being like we again we've put our power externally based on the conditioning that we've had. And so, I see this in the medical field too, right? Somebody has a white coat on, we automatically believe that that person knows exactly what to do to help fix us, cure
Mm-hmm.
us, in whatever that might be. It's the very same thing that can happen if somebody has been in that place where, this person knows all, and now I'm coming to, right, a spiritual healer, a practitioner, somebody who is in the, mental wellness field, right, who is trying to support this person, and it's like they know all, and
Yeah.
so I have to listen and follow whatever they're telling me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you guys see this in your practices?
Oh, it's
What does that look like
dangerous.
for you?
It's
Mm.
dangerous to have that experience and not recognize it, especially when we're talking about, being part of the healing or helping profession. In part because, for instance, one of the things that I teach to my clinicians, and I know you mentioned the pedestal earlier, Amanda, when they are functioning in this blind obedience, there's ethics that come into that with regard to being a clinician.
Yeah.
Right. So we have, and I train my clinicians on this all the time, on how to mitigate for that, because we are not to decide for them or their life, regardless of, where they came from or what they're expecting of us, or any type of, counter or cross transference that is pushed our way. We really have to be intentional on actually doing the exact opposite of what religious trauma does, and that's empowering the individual to see and speak and seek for themselves. Right? If you have that, you don't have mental illness. You just don't.
Yep.
Right? And if you have that, you don't have many of other things, including a reliance on anything but self.
Yep.
So that's really what I see is when people, for instance, they come into therapy and they need to be here every week. Right? That to me tells me that there's some work that I need to do to help them believe in themselves and their own autonomy and identity. We've got some identity development to do here.
Yeah.
And those who come in with really any experience as a child in a church struggle with identity. Like we can put that in every single treatment plan. confidence we can put in every single treatment plan. They are directly related to religious trauma and just growing up in a church or growing up with parents who had their own unresolved trauma, regardless of if it was church or not. You have
right?
children who cannot decide for themselves and are being punished by their parents and society when they were never given the opportunity to figure out who they were or what it felt like in their bodies to choose for themselves without having to hear someone's mouth about it.
Right. Right.
We see it everywhere and in so many different ways. Like I could write a book in response
Oh,
to
yeah.
your question.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's, and I think that's why this is so important, because we have to be very careful about how we are guiding our clients, because I've seen, like, you made a really good point, Shamika, because I think as a new practitioner sometimes we want to support our clients and we want to help them. And I've seen practitioners, oh, I meet with my clients twice a week. I'm like, when did that client have time to breathe? Like, when do they have time to check in with themselves? And it becomes this pattern of like, oh, I have to go talk to this person so that I can figure out, right, like what's wrong and what I need to do. And it's like, that is our responsibility of being able to take that step back and say, okay, wait, like, no, this is about this person having their own autonomy. Like, how do I get this person to make their own decisions, to come to their own conclusions, to clear away whatever is blocking them from trusting themselves? Because oftentimes we lose that, right, in those religious sectors. Amanda, you were going to say something.
Oh, yeah, no worries. No, I wrote things down because perimenopause and me jive together. Sometimes I'm like, we're just gonna write it down so we don't forget it.
I got
100%.
notes too.
But no, both of you kind of touched on it. The whole thing of like, I see people outsourcing their truth. So when people are showing up weekly, bi-weekly, sometimes I'll get freaking messages out, things that we already talked about. But it's like they don't want to fart sideways without checking in with you first. And it's like, okay, breathe. Remember what we talked about. Breathe. You've got this. We will talk at the next session. Like, you've got this. But it's always like this codependency because they've been raised in codependency their whole life. So that is all they know. So it's like switching one thing. When you, like, those of us that have worked with people in addictions, a lot of people will say a lot of people in addictions shift one addiction for the next, but they shift like an addiction, say cocaine, for food. So something that's, really harmful to something that's more socially appropriate. So they're not actually dealing with all of the underlying things that are causing the addiction in the first place. They just mask it with something else. Like, okay, now I'm going to binge Netflix. Or now,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then some people, it's like you see religious become that. Like, I've seen so many people that are like all of a sudden born again after they, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
So
Again,
you
the
bring up an interesting
outsourcing your
point,
authority.
Amanda. It's like the addiction from one thing to the other. So the addiction to having my authority outsourced in this context to now having it outsourced in this context. It's the same kind of idea. So how do we return that? Like, how do we get our clients? I'd love to hear any practical tips you guys have on how do we get our clients to get back to that. So first off, we're making sure we're not, in enforcing that or having that transference in any way, but also like, how do we then, like, if we start to see it, how do we then push it back so that we're still staying in our position, but we're also not letting them just like, oh, whatever Shamika says I have to do, whatever Amanda tells me to do, or whatever she says is why I'm having this pattern or why I'm doing this thing. It has to be that, and not letting them discover it for themselves.
Yeah, that in itself is like a loaded question for various reasons, including the fact that there are so many different things that must occur, and it's different for everyone. But confrontation is one of those skills that you kind of really can't miss, as well as like radical acceptance. You really can't miss it in this conversation. You really can't miss identity formation, right? So many different things, but from a clinical standpoint, um, we burn out. Like, our burnout rate is high for a reason, right? It's high for a reason. So one of the primary things, and the reason why I say that, is as the clinician, as the practitioner, the individual who is saying, I am agreeing to support you here is for you to also stay rooted and grounded in your individual identity and function on, what does it look like for me to be taken care of, to show up the way that I want to show up. Because, and I want to say, like, I went through this whole humanized movement phase that is still continuing, but I say that even in this moment, as clinicians, we too are human. And it can be very easy for us to be present with a client, and now we are cycling through their energy, right? So as an individual, identifying you're human and intentionally being present with your human in a way that you are also practicing radical acceptance, right? You are also practicing self-care and making sure that when you are working with someone else, you are reflecting. That's another skill that is helpful. You are reflecting versus receiving and absorbing. Because if we are, and I've been saying this for probably close to 2 decades now, if we are receiving their shit, they're not taking care of their shit because we're holding it. Right? Mm-hmm. Right. How can they do something with it if we have picked it up and put it in our bag? It's no longer a resource for them to use. All right. So reflecting it is a powerful tool to say, and I say to my clients all the time, like if they ask me if they did good, do you think I did good, or what do you think about this? I'm like, doesn't matter what I think. What do you think? Mm-hmm. Right? That's not, or I tell this one client, very first time I met her, she asked me for approval. And I asked her, why are you asking me that? That's not a question for me.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It's not a question for me. What you really want me to do is pat you on the back and say you did a good job for making a decision for yourself. What do you think you just did? How do you feel about the decision that you made? Because whatever you say, I support you there. I support you there, mm-hmm. Right? So another skill would be to naturalize and neutralize ourselves, but also the experience that they're having, right? Help them to see that that was a biological response, right? That wasn't necessarily a you response. Yes, you were being piloted and you were the vehicle, but that was a biological response.
Yep.
All right. So how can we normalize the experience is also something that I have found to be very helpful. But again, like I said, your question was rather loaded. And this is not something else that I preach about quite often and could write a book on.
I love asking these questions, Shamika. I love to be the devil's advocate first off. I love to bring out all aspects because I think it's important that we're not all the same. And you make a good point with clinicians and practitioners. Like I still feel like every practitioner should hold that same standard for themselves. You should hold the standard of making sure you are grounded and rooted in your own identity, holding that space of this is mine and that is yours, and not buying into their stories is what often I like to think of it. I'm not buying into your story. I'm holding your story and I'll help you look at your story together, but it's not mine. Like I love the way you presented that because I can't hold it. Like that's not mine. It's not mine to say whether this was right or wrong. Like, I had a client tell me, she's a younger client, she's in her early 20s, and she said, I know you're not going to like this. And I was like, whoa, like, it doesn't matter whether I like this or not. Like, what are you, like, first off, why does it matter? Like I could already tell that there was this authority figure that she was like, you're going to judge me for this. Like everybody else does. It was like when I first met her, and I'm sure every other therapist, every other counselor had done that to her, had told her like, well, I don't know, but I had that experience of like, that's not for me. This is your life and you're going to make decisions that are for you and not for you. I'm here to guide. I'm here to direct what is yours. Like you said, Shamika, I think that's one of the most important skills we can have is reflecting back what they're saying so that they can hear it in a different way, because they're hearing it for themselves, but oftentimes they've numbed that out or they can't quite hear it. But when you speak it to them, it's like, oh, when you say it, that sounds stupid, or that doesn't sound like, why would I do that? When you said it, why is it different? Because it's actually bringing that to them in a different way. And so I 100% agree. Reflecting is such a good skill that we all should have as somebody who is supporting.
Absolutely. It is great power in holding up a mirror and reflecting things back, because people are so used to regurgitating. It's societally programmed in us. It's like, okay, and again, searching for acceptance, constant looking for external validation, right? So when you're holding up that loving mirror, and I love to give people something to ponder. It's like, let's just play with me for a minute. What happens if God is, God's source, if we're all God's source? Just play with this concept for a minute. What could that mean? What would that mean for you? You don't need to answer right now. This is not right now, but just like posing something different and kind of putting the crack in the egg, right? Without pushing anything on, but just like, hey, just sit with this for a second. And then explaining perceived truth versus soul truth. What is an actual core truth versus a perceived truth? Because just because something is true for you in this moment does not mean that it's actually your truth. It's a perceived truth because it's a conditioned truth that you believe in this moment because you haven't yet shifted outside of that. But let's just play for a minute that there's things outside of that. Let's just play like we're playing a video game for a minute. What if? Because so many people weren't allowed to think outside of that for 30 seconds because heaven forbid if they did, they're like, demon's gonna come and pull you up. And it's like, no, like there's no demons in this room. I've got it on fucking locked down. So what if that power comes from with it? Like just play with it and you can just, do with it what you will. But I think it is just creating the little cracks in the glass for people to kind of, think of on their own. And then, like both of you had said, reflecting that back because so many people just have not had anything reflected back to them as something different, right? It's like, okay, cool. You believe this? Sweet. But what if? Let's just shift this a little bit. What if this is what that means? What if it's like, more than one thing can simultaneously be true at once. So let's expand for a moment. So let's just take off the blinders for a brief moment. I'm not saying that you're wrong because I don't really give a shit. Like, let's just look beyond the current tunnel vision for one brief moment. And it's like people don't know what to do with that because if they were told constantly, like, well, now you're saying this, so I'm going to believe that. No, please don't believe something because I say, because I'm not actually saying anything. I'm just saying, what if there's something different out there? What could that look like? What could that feel like? If you just open up the armor for a brief moment. You've been swimming in the ocean with a dry suit. Let yourself, put on a bathing suit and go for a swim. What does the water feel like to you? Not because somebody said to you, this is what the water is supposed to feel like. So you go in there, it feels like spicy onions. Well, what is a spicy onion? You're just saying that because that person told you it feels like spicy onion. That doesn't even make sense. What does it actually like? Just a minute. What do you feel that feels like? Because they don't even realize that what they're regurgitating half the time is like, that's neither here nor there. What is that? That's literally manipulation or control just for the sake of it.
And I think that's a lot of the work, right? Is helping them distinguish that is this theirs or is this not theirs? Where did this belief come from? Where did this idea come from? And is it truly your core belief or is this what you've been conditioned to believe? I think that's a lot of the work that, I'm sure we all see in our practices is helping them distinguish that. And if it is a core belief, great. And if that's their core belief now, then maybe it could shift later, but it's not right or wrong unless it's not serving them, right? If it's not serving them, then of course, how can we look at that differently, as you were saying, right? Giving them a different perspective on that, which I 100% agree with. So what I hear coming through is certain skills that we as practitioners have and can help our clients, supporting them in making sure we're staying in like our energy. That's how I guess I would frame it, in our energy, and just holding that space, right? We are somebody who's going to hold the space for them to discover their own thing. And that is key in making sure we're not stepping into that role of the new authority, right? Or the new the new person they're going to hopefully please, right? So there is a part in this though that there's a difference between holding space for someone's experience and then treating them from a clinical perspective, right? Especially trauma from a clinical perspective. So I would love to expand this conversation into that realm. In how do we, because, we all want to have an ethical practice, right? And we want to recognize when we're not necessarily the right person to support this. Now, I would love to believe that I could help anybody, and I also know my limitations, right? There are things that I don't have the skill set to guide or to assist in. And so it's like, how do we recognize, or where do we recognize that a client might need more mental health support alongside the spiritual or somatic work, right? Because there are a lot of somatic work coaches, practitioners out there. There are a lot of spiritual coaches, practitioners out there. And I think both, right, the clinical side and the more spiritual side are both needed. And so how do we know as practitioners, what have you guys seen in your experience where you're like, okay, it's time to refer this out, or it's time to, right, I've done my part, it's time for them to maybe work with somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's when you feel like you're hitting a wall with something, and it also comes to client readiness, right? Like if a client isn't ready, willing, or able to do a certain amount of work or show up for themselves on that level, it's like, okay, then you kind of have to decide, like, is this just turning into another regurgitation of what you're used to? Because if you're not ready, willing, or able to show up, you've got to be 50% of the equation. I can only meet you 50% of the way. And I'm feeling, I mean, I personally go into people's energy before I even work with them at first, because I don't believe that we're meant to help everybody. There's so many amazing practitioners and clinicians and things out there. So it's always checking in with myself. Am I the best person to help this person at this point in their journey? And there's been times where I'm like, no, they're not quite ready to dive in as deep as I go. I'm going to refer them to so and so. And then when they're ready, they can come to me if and when they feel so. I haven't at this point had to refer somebody out after I've been working with them, because I do that preliminary, because I energetically kind of feel into that. I'm like, you know what? I understand what you're drawn to me, but maybe feel into this. Like, hey, I know this person over here. This is their specialty. This is their jam. Because yeah, different people are at different places within themselves, and it's just kind of feeling into that energy. And if that's something, and I see some people too, this hasn't been a reality for me, but I have seen many colleagues that they don't realize that they had, some conditioning and some trigger fest happened.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. And they've messaged me like, hey, can you maybe, take over this client for me? Because this happened. I didn't realize this was a trigger for me. I am no longer a match. And I'm like, cool, good for you for recognizing and realizing that. So you guys are pinging off of each other. So it's like, if you're feeling like you're hitting a wall with the client for whichever reason, then that's a good time to be like, hey, just a minute. Maybe somebody else could help. Hey, maybe Shamika's got more of a grounding. Maybe Danny has more of a understanding on this or can help through this. But me and this client have gone as far as we can on this journey, but that really takes knowing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like really feeling in and dropping the fucking ego, because so many practitioners like, I can do it all. You're not meant to do it all. You're not meant to do it all. And the client, hey, hitting that wall with somebody doesn't mean that you're not good at what you do. It's like, okay, you've just reached the point that you were meant to come to with that person, and now their journey can continue or not continue, however they choose, with somebody else. Because some people come to you because they feel they have to, but they actually don't even want to change. And I don't care how good you are, if someone's not ready, willing, or able to do it, like, well, I'll change this, but not this, because this is more convenient. This is more on the surface. Well, yeah, but this is all linked to this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not ready, willing, or able to do this work, and you're not ready, willing, or able to see that they're actually one and the fucking same, then I'm so sorry. Like, I'm not going to waste your time or your money. Like, I can refer you out, but I'm going to give you this information right now. Like you need to be able to look at these deeper sides of yourself if you want those changes. But a lot of people, it's lip service. My parent, my partner, my XYZ, my boss wanted me to go to therapy and wanted me to do this. I'm doing it not because I want to, not because I think anything is wrong with us. Or they're really like, that's the hill they're going to die on. So it's like assessing where is that person personally at? Is this hey, like this isn't working right now, and here I'm reflecting that back onto them of why? Or is this like, hey, you know what? So and so is really, really good at this style of thing. Specifies right into this. So I'm going to refer them out to you if that feels aligned for you. But right now, we can't continue on our journey together because I helped you as best as I can. Or however you want to word it.
Yeah, in my experience, alignment is probably an easy way to kind of sum it up. Like we can talk about, of course, Amanda made some amazing points. And two words that came to mind for me were competency and capacity. But it's on both sides, right? So is my client currently able to come into the capacity and reach the competence, the level of competence that it's going to make sense for them to be at, for them to receive me where I'm at? And how I am going to share this thing with them in the many ways that I'm capable of doing that. But are they ready to receive it? Are they able to get there? Right? Because sometimes they start and they think they can, but then they get in and they realize that this is way more than I expected. Right. And if we do not have this mutual space of alignment where the energy is flowing back and forth, then there's maybe not this rapport or trust in place to where they can believe and trust in me and what I'm capable of, and the fact that they too can maybe borrow some of that and get there themselves as well. Right. So alignment is a word that comes up for me. But also when this client reaches that wall, do I see myself as someone as capable of supporting them to move it, shift it, dissolve it, shape shift it, right? And if I don't believe in myself, then what are we doing here? Right? But also, if they don't believe in my abilities, then what are we doing here? They're a lot less likely to come over to the dark side, right? Because it looks dark to them from where they're standing.
Yep.
Right. But if they trust us and they have that rapport and we trust ourselves, knowing that we're not actually leading them into darkness because we ourselves can see the picture, right? It looks dark to them. But if as the clinician or the person who's supporting them do not see what's on the other side, what are we supporting them to do? Right. So do we have that forethought at the same time? Are we capable? Are we competent? But do we also have the capacity? Because again, there will be times when a client comes in and they're not ready. And we don't have the capacity to be not ready with them.
Nope.
Right. And so being able to say, you know what, this is going to the way that I see you needing support right now is more than what I can commit to being present for. Right? We can say that too.
Yeah.
And send them elsewhere. Right. And there might be times. So for instance, I believe this was the one we talked about, Danny. The last time you and I met, we talked about grief.
Yeah.
Right. And I shared that for years, I didn't work with clients with grief because I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Right. I was dealing with my own complicated grief at the time. Right. And so inviting people into my space that were going to naturally push me where I was in my life and I wasn't ready to move would have not been a good decision on my part. Right. And now we're back into the ethics of do no harm. Right. How do I support a client that I know I can't show up for?
Yeah.
So there are so many different ways to say, is this an appropriate client for me? But it's definitely a two-way street. Right? Because they might, like you mentioned, man, they might really want to work with us. But if it's not working for us, how can it work for them? And vice versa. We might really want to work with them. But if the fact that we are who we are says no to them, how do we support them to progress? Because typically what happens in that space, regardless of what direction we're driving, if one person is not ready, the ship is not going to move. And if it does, it's going to go begrudgingly. All right, we're gonna have to fight the ship.
Yep.
And I don't like to fight ships. I like to get in there and move. All right, so if you're not looking like you're going to make some progress, you are going to drain me. So also
That's when we
practicing with my
fire.
own sense of discernment to say, I don't have the energy to exhaust right now.
Nope.
All right.
Well, that's another thing too. It's like people that are used to looking outside of themselves are looking, just tell me the answer. Bibbity bobbity boomy with a magic wand, and then make it like, honey, you are your own magic wand. You are the medicine. I'm just here to hold up a mirror. I can help you walk the path, but I'm sure as hell not going to put you on my shoulders and walk it for you. Like, you've got to stand on your own 2 feet, and I will absolutely be there to be like, all right, now plant your toes in, stack your body to help you do that. But people are so often, especially people coming from religious programming, looking, do it for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do it for me. Tell me what to do. I can't tell you what to do.
Well, the part of the biggest challenge is when they come from religious programming is they don't have trust for self. So they need you to do it for them.
Yep.
Right? And I wrote down like they shut down. People who experience religious trauma, like their central nervous system is so sensitive, it easily goes into overdrive. Literally, if you ask them to go drive a new direction, so many are just immediately immobilized because this is the way that's been tried and true. And I can't veer off the unbeaten path. And if I do, right, they're so concerned about what's going to happen. So freeze by you simply saying, hey, make a left instead of a right.
Yeah.
Like, I always go right. No, make a left. And trust immediately stops and they freeze. And that's what happens when you externalize that authority.
Exactly. Of taking that power back is like each breath, each moment. Let's stand here together and do this, because it's so scary, because they've never, it's always been like, just tell me what, like outsource, outsource, outsource.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is also why it's so important for all of us, right? For practitioners, clinicians, to all have networks and for us to connect and communicate, because when we come up against a situation where it's like, oh, I'm not the person that has the capacity to hold this person right now because of whatever, right? Whatever reason, the alignment piece, right? That Shamika was talking about, like that's the opportunity to be like, and I know this person who can do that for you, right? Or the work sounds like maybe it's this type of work that you need to step into, or what I'm hearing might be a good path for you, right? Because sometimes it is more somatic work, sometimes it is more mental work, and it just depends on where you're at as a practitioner and what you're willing and capable of holding. Because I know I've had my own experiences where I fired clients, right? Just based on like, yeah, sorry, but I'm not the person for you. Like, it's very clear. Like, and they're like, but our sessions are going so good. And I'm like, yeah, no, right? That it's not. And I have to be able to know that and to hold that and to be like, okay, I'm this, but you know what? Like, you want somebody to support you. Here's some recommendations, right? Here's some people, or here's some training that maybe you want to take a look at, and give them something, right, that they can step into. It's important for us, right? I believe in collaboration over competition. I know Critical Mass believes in that as
100%.
well. I'm sure we all believe in that. And so this is why this is so great, because we get to learn from each other and be like, oh, she's really good at this and she's really good at this. She's able to hold space for this. Like you said, Shamika, grief wasn't something you were wanting to step into at the time. And right, that was very clear. There's been things in relationships that I'm like, this starts to come up. It's like, that's not my realm, until I started to do my own work. And then I was ready to step into those spaces. And so that's us connecting and referring and building a community around us so that we can support our clients when maybe we're not the right fit, right? So I'd like to step into the body. And I know both of you do somatic work. So I want to step into this place of, first off, how does the body carry fear or shame when we're talking in relation to religious teachings? Is it the same or is it different in just a universal sense? What are your thoughts, ladies?
I would personally say that it carries it similarly to how it would any other trauma. It imprints in the body in such a way, and it will go wherever it needs to go or wherever we place it. But one of the big things that I've noticed when people experience like a religious trauma is, like I mentioned just a moment ago, that it's typically a freeze. Their freeze response becomes very, very strong, and I've seen that to be the case over any of the other responses, right? They're not fighting, right? They're not likely to flee. They typically are a lot more likely to shut down and freeze in real time and receive whatever trauma is coming their way by doing so. So it typically is imprinted all over the body in a way that the lights are very common to go out. So, they are now depressed and isolated in their mind, no longer in their body, but in their mind, and an overactive mind at that. And so their visibility typically goes very, very low as a result. So I would say it's across the body. And yes, I'm licensed clinician. I do somatic work, but I also do spiritual work, right? So I take on spiritual cases, and I have found that it doesn't really matter which one is going to be appropriate. You benefit from all of them, but which faculties are active will decipher which one makes the most sense right now. Right? Yeah. Sometimes, the cognitive faculties are not active, and even the somatic faculties have been shut off for so long that even just touching one of those vessels and opening up goes straight into that shutdown, that freeze. Mm-hmm. And so being able to decipher what is going to be most beneficial in this particular moment is helpful, because it's all over the body and functioning in every single different way that you can. There is some religious trauma that has been imprinted in it. That has been the experience. Right? If you think about, for instance, the Bible covers everything. It covers everything. Why wouldn't it be all over our bodies? Mm-hmm. Right? It covers how we sleep. Right? It covers what we're supposed to eat and not eat, and when. Right? It covers relationships. It covers everything. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't it be all over the body?
So true. I've seen, everything that Shamika just said, like completely everything, especially like how the fear shows up. And I've really noticed like anxiety and depression. When confronting that, definitely anxiety. Like you can see people physically, their body is like literally shrinking in on themselves. And it's like trying to like, hey, let's just start with breath for a second. Let's just like try to drop our shoulders. And you see they're like, they go from tense this way to like forward this way. And it's like,
the other tense.
Shallow breaths.
And the shallow breaths.
The other tense. Mm-hmm. Okay. Just like freeing the body, just the tiniest itty bitty bit. Like let's find some like even 10% safety in our body, because our body isn't ours in religious training. We're just this vessel, and somebody else is in the driver's seat, and we're handcuffed and gagged in the back, right? So it's like, let's slowly take the gag off, slowly, and the handcuffs, and breathe into how that feels. And then breathe yourself into the front seat. And then eventually when we're ready, we'll put your, into the driver's seat. Oh my God, behind the wheel. But like, you see a lot of people, and then they'll oscillate between them, right? Like it's the freeze response, and all of a sudden they're fawning, and then they go back to freeze, and then they're running off in this direction. And you're like, okay, you're outside of your body. Let's bring you back into your body. But when you've never been in your body and you're taught your body is unsafe, that's a whole thing to unpack right there, right?
Right.
And it's like, just like Shamika said, it's all over the body, because the body, you were taught your body isn't yours. So the biggest thing with somatics is bringing yourself back into your body and your resonance and your being. What does that feel like to be your own being? And it's scary as fuck when you're not used to, you're not allowed to be, right? And this was demonized, so to speak. So it's just like holding space for that. Of the like, okay, let's breathe for a second and literally breathe yourself back into your body and feel into just a tiny bit of safety. Put your hand on your chest, put your, where is it showing up? But yeah, bringing self back into being is really big. And you see people literally sketch right the fuck out.
Right.
Religion is like a lesson of dissociation of self, right? It's teaching you how to dissociate from who you are as an individual, as a being. And so when you're talking about the driver's seat, most people, when you're like breathe into the front seat, they will, as soon as you say go into the front seat, they're like, well, that's not my seat. That's not for me. It's not for me. That's for somebody else. Get somebody else to do it. But we're talking about your life. No, get somebody else to do it. I can't drive that car.
Well, think of that saying, Jesus takes the wheel.
Yes, it's for someone else.
Anybody but me.
Well, I mean, that's twofold for, right? Like, we then have to take 100% responsibility. And if I've never been 100% responsible for myself and my life, like, that's scary as hell. I mean, the decisions that I make, like, I'm at cause, like, come on now, like, that's not safe. And then when my body isn't safe and you're telling me to connect with my body, but my body doesn't feel safe, like, yeah, like that's 100. Like I hear, somatic coaches and they're like, oftentimes reconnect to the body. And I'm like, yeah. And if you haven't felt safe in the body, you're just throwing them back into trauma. You're throwing them back into that experience again, and people are rejecting it, right? And so I think both of you brought up, and I think it was beautifully said, it's these small little things to help them start to feel safe in the body again with just a simple breath, like take a deep breath, right? Let's get out of the head, right? Like those simple little things can help bring somebody to start, that's probably one of the first things I will do with a client, especially if I start getting that sense that they don't feel safe in the body, is small, like just small breath, like let's just take some small breaths. And like you said, Amanda, hand on your, if it feels good, like if you're called to do that, yeah, hand on your heart. Most people feel very comfortable just putting their hand on their heart, but that's, whatever's open for them. And just like starting that like feeling is huge for a lot of people and can really help them, when they start to feel overwhelmed or triggered or agitated by, whatever might be happening in the external, that they can, like, that's that simple practice. Like, I've made it an anchor for myself. The minute that I put my hand on my heart and one hand on my belly, like, I immediately start to relax and feel grounded. Like, that's an anchor for me to just come back home and come back here. And so it's something that can be so simple that we can teach our clients and help them start to return back to the body and then begin that trust within the body once again, right?
Yeah.
I love it. So when we I want to continue this just a little bit more, because there are lots of ways that, and you both kind of brought it up in the sense of they go into freezing, and then Amanda, right? Fawn, freeze, right? And when they get into that place, right? What are some of the signals that you see? So somebody that might not have experience in working with somebody who goes into the freeze, what are some of the signals that you guys see when somebody is starting to either internalize religious fear or that religious trauma maybe that they've experienced? What are some of the things that you start to see with them?
Are you thinking
like a somatic? Oh, sorry, Shamika, go for it.
I'm just asking, are you referring to like along the lines of the somatic responses that might be coming up? Yeah, it's pretty consistent. One thing is that they literally just start to dissociate, and sometimes it happens very slowly. One thing that happens as a sign of dissociation is they might start talking very fast. Like I do more sensorial, so it feels like they are getting ready to get caught in a tornado and get taken up, right? And so I get a visual that's just like this, right? And so that's one way. But they also might begin to stutter, take longer to respond. You start losing eye contact. Something that Amanda has mentioned a lot is you can literally see their body start to constrict and come inwards. Sometimes they will actually start to physically shrink as well.
Yeah.
Right, you'll see the head go down, and sometimes you'll even see like the turtle, right, where they are now shrinking themselves. They're going into like a younger version of self. Like you can see some visible things pretty clearly. But even someone who might be speaking the way that I'm speaking now, their voice might start to get a little soft and a bit inconsistent. And then also like the behaviors start to get a bit mismatched. So maybe they're telling a sad story, but they're laughing.
Yeah.
Right? Where they had started crying, and as soon as they started crying, the tears went away, and now they're displaying something different. Right? So those are all kind of like signs of dissociation, and that maybe they're not quite in the same present reality anymore. They might be dipping into other versions of reality and or past spaces in their life.
Yeah, so good. So
Yeah,
good.
no, yeah, everything. Yeah, you basically covered everything I was going to say. And then to people fidgeting, like even I'm a fidgety human and fidgeting right now, like it's just, but you see that change, like people even more so, like really friggin', and they're stimming, like the rocking, and it's like, oh, okay, it's like everything gets amped up or pulls in. It's just a shift in what their norm is.
And for whatever reason, like the fawning feels wavy. Like they start to like literally move their body like this. Like it gets soft and wavy. Think like a cat, for instance. So that would be another sign. And what you were mentioning, Amanda, with like the fidgety, that is like the tornado for me, where all of a sudden it's like everything is moving quickly. Yeah. Typically everything either starts moving quickly or it slows down or it gets wavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one, so I agree. I see a lot of like the tapping as well, or I'll see the breath like it's like, oh, like something, right. Like that's like, it's like, okay, so something's heavy, right? Something feels, for me, it's like, oh, something feels heavy. Like I can start to feel that, like, oh, there's something here. Like, okay, that's always a really good sign. So I love that we called those out, because I think sometimes we could ignore those or chalk those up to something else. But when we really keen our eye to notice those subtle shifts, or notice our client, like be so in tune with our client that we know, like I think you said, Amanda, when there's that, like, wait a minute, that's not their normal pattern, or that's not how they normal react or respond. And I think you're spot on, Shamika, with the mismatch. Like that is, like, sometimes it can be very subtle, and somebody who's really good at being manipulative in the sense of knowing what that person wants to see and being able to convert themselves or contort themselves to do that. But the body is always going to respond. Like, right, we all know the body feels before the mind can come to terms with what is going on or what is happening. So you can see, if you pay attention, right, if you're able to tune that skill in, to be able to see that subtle shift, to know, like, oh, something's here, right? And that's something for us to dive further into. So I've so loved everything so far, but I want to go just a little bit into a little bit of a different direction for a second. And because I feel like the goal with religious trauma, obviously we're not here to shift one belief system, like change this to this, right? We're not trying to this authority to this authority, this addiction to this addiction, right? We're trying to help our clients really remember, right, that they are sovereign beings, right? That they have free will, that they are able to do and express themselves as they choose, and not have to feel that weight of whatever, the religious experience taught them. So I would love to dive into, what does it look like when a client is starting to trust their own discernment again? Because that's right, that is, we've all stated it, that's the goal. The goal is to help them really trust themselves again. So how would we know as a practitioner, like, okay, they're starting to trust themselves again, or they're they're starting to follow or trust their intuition or their discernment? What does that look like? What do you see?
Well, you can literally see it. You can literally feel it in your session, both energetically, obviously, but it shows up as them actually trusting what they're saying and not being so dependent on you and outsourcing. Well, what do you think? What do you? It's like how they hold themselves. It can be something simple as usually they're like this, and then suddenly they're like this, or they're not as shifty. Or they're sitting with things for a second instead of having to feel like they have to like jump on everything that you. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Like they're allowing themselves to feel into it for a second and then respond because they're not so worried about it being the right or wrong answer. They're like, wait a minute, I'm actually going to sit here with this for a second. And it's like these subtle shifts that inside as a practitioner, you're like, yeah. Obviously, you're not going to scream in the middle of a session and be excited, but you're like,
why not?
You. It's like, oh, I have to wait until they're done what they're doing, but I have scared the shit out of people because I'm like, holy shit, that is a big thing. Like, yes, do you see? Because sometimes it's reflecting that back because it might be subtle and they don't see that and they don't feel like they're making progress. I'm like, dude, you didn't respond instantly. Like you sat there and you allowed to feel it into your body. And then you didn't get mad at yourself when you forgot what I said because you were having that like disassociation. You just went, I'm sorry, can you repeat yourself? And you weren't beating yourself up over it. You just asked me instead of going, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't know what you said. It's like, it's okay. It's like those, like, how are you showing up? How are you speaking to me? How are you holding yourself? Where's your energy at? Where's your, like, the personal accountability shift, right? It's just like yeah, okay, wait a minute. I actually don't understand that. Hey, wait a minute. What are you actually saying? What do you mean by that? Whereas people who were just talked at their whole life, just take everything and they're like this and they don't question anything of what, if they don't understand, you can just see them like, oh, fuck, I don't get that. And they just sit with it. It's like, okay, what's the part that you're caught on? Right? Instead of like having to prompt, like, hey, I see you're kind of pulling in a little bit. Is there something that you're not understanding? Or is there something you need some help with understanding? But they'll be like, hey, wait a minute. I think you mean this, but what do you actually mean by that? You're like, yeah. Wicked, I'm so sorry. No, don't be sorry. We need to celebrate this. No, sorry. Hell yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite moments too. The realization, like I have a client, so I teach more times than not these days. And so I have interns that have been sitting in and shadowing my sessions and they get excited when they're on the other end. But there have been times where like my clients will say things and I'm like celebrating these small wins in session. But then my interns are super excited. They're like, how did you sit in silence for so long? Right. And then part of it is I'm waiting for them to finish so I can prove to them that they just gave me all the evidence that they are now confident. So yes, I was quiet for 20 minutes because I was taking notes so I could tell them that they are wrong and they are confident. Here are my notes. All right. So I enjoy those moments when, for instance, I got a lot of fire. I don't think it's difficult to tell. But I enjoy when I have a client and they come in and they go from like, I'm like, you are an adult. I'm an adult too. Just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean you need to be a child in here. All right. And so the moments where they start to like go toe to toe with me, I'm like, ooh, I've been waiting for this. Yep. I'm so excited and proud of you. Like I have some clients and they're like, oh, this is the story I was going to say. We were in session and I had interns shadowing the session and my client gets ready to shrink. And I made a very subconscious face and she immediately said, you know what? I'm going to give you an answer because I know I can do it. Wow. All right. She said, she was reading my face. She said, I know you're going to tell me to answer my own question. I can do this. Give me just a second. And she took about 30 seconds and she gave us an answer. So when they can do that, that is one of the signs that now they are stopping and checking themselves. And they have literally just now, they've shifted me from, this expectation as a therapist to you're just a sounding board because I believe in myself now. And I'm like, oh, so you don't need me anymore. So we should close there. I didn't say that. Well, it sounded to me like you know what you're doing now.
Yes,
So,
that is
so,
I would agree. Best
so like I
feeling.
said, Amanda, why wouldn't we do that in session? I'm definitely going to celebrate the small things with my clients.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh
And
yeah, and I'm like drama llama when it comes to it. It's like, yes, let's be there. Let's blow this up. Let's feel this. Let's friggin' feel this.
yeah, I
Mhm.
was like, hold on, wait a minute. Did you hear what you just said?
Yeah.
Like, why
Like,
are you trying to skip past that
yep.
moment? No, we are going to sit in this for a little while. And then I literally just start
Yeah.
clapping.
Yeah.
Let me know when you believe it, because you just told me it happened. When you believe it, we'll move on to the next point in today's session.
Yeah.
Yes.
I recently had a client who was like, she's like, I probably should have reached out to you, but here's what happened. And she walked me through exactly what she did, how she calmed her nervous system, how she processed what was happening, and she decided, like, in that moment to make a decision to move forward with something. And so she's telling and it was like she started with that, and I was like, where was I? I wasn't needed in that. Like, you handled it exactly as you should, like, right, like you handled it right, like you, like, I was like, this is the best thing I could ever hear. Like, I don't want you to call me. Like, I don't want you to, I mean, I have that as an option for my clients, and I'm always like, I love when you don't call me. Like, I don't, like, right, I love working with you, don't get me wrong, but I love when you don't call me, when you figure it out for yourself. Like, that's a clear sign to me that you're learning, you're processing, you're taking responsibility for yourself, you're going within and figuring it out. And it's funny because they still have that feeling of like, yeah, but I still got triggered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I still, I still got upset about it. And I'm like, I think there's such a misconception around it, is that you're never going to get triggered or you're never going to get frustrated. Like, life is emotion, like living is emotion, and you've got, like, we experience all emotion, and like there is no, I think, for societal, and I would even come from this religious perspective, that there are good emotions and bad emotions, and that is simply not true. They're just simple emotions. It's what we're putting the meaning to it or the experience to it. But especially in that religious black and white type thinking, it's like, oh no, I have to be happy all the time. And I think even in spiritual communities, right, like that spiritual bypassing of like, no, you have to be positive and happy all the time. It's like, no, I'm a human having a human experience, and like, I'm meant to get triggered. I'm meant to confront places where I'm out of alignment. Like, that's, yes, like, and that's a good thing, right?
I think it's such a good point, Danny, is we have to take the stigma away from triggers.
Yeah.
Triggers are an amazing thing. And as soon as someone's like, oh my God, I got triggered. Yay, you did. What was it? Let's unpack that, because triggers hold our wisdom.
Yeah.
Triggers show us, hey, this is where shadow's showing up for you. This is
Yeah.
where some work needs to be done. And it's like, instead of like going, oh my God, Trigger's like, here we go. All right, let's dance, bitch. And being
Yeah.
able to, like, when we shift our perception, I think is, my favorite Wayne Dyer quote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So
Yeah.
helping our clients see these things that they feel small about, how can we leverage this? Like, you were triggered? Sweet.
Great.
Oh, you only let it take you out for like an hour instead of a
Yeah.
whole day?
A whole
Dude, that's
year.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. But it's a whole hour, but it wasn't a whole day.
Right.
It wasn't a whole day, dude. Like, it's not about never being triggered. It's about being able to show up to it faster with more ease. And faster with more ease might be an hour instead of a day. That is still a massive celebratory thing.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe in that, being triggered for an hour, you didn't spin out completely. You just spun out a little bit, but you were still able to function, because in that spin out, that was when you were doing your nervous system reset. That's when you were,
100%.
doing these different things. You were already showing up to it. It just took you that long. That's beautiful. That's incredible. It's like changing this, because there's all these demonization things. Like, we have to avoid triggers. And I've had so many people that have come from treatment, and it drives me nuts, of saying they were in treatment and everyone's walking around with eggshells of not wanting to trigger each other. Where's a better place to be fucking triggered? In treatment, so you can learn how to show up to it in an appropriate, grounded way and have the support. When you're triggered, it's like, excuse me, they're teaching you in treatment not to be triggered and not to trigger each other. That's the perfect place because life is triggering.
Yeah.
So let's learn in a safe environment how to show up for that self, how to show up for that, right? And not take the blame. If I'm being a dick, okay, that's a whole different story. But if I'm just being authentically myself and somebody else get triggered, especially people with religious traumas, like, oh my God, I did it wrong. I hurt that person. No, you didn't. That person was hurt because their personal stuff was going on. They're personally triggered by you showing up in the way that you did. But that's not your fault. Because people with that religious trauma think, oh my God, it's like, I did it wrong, I did it wrong, I did it wrong. No. This is their personal thing. You know, you can say your story depending on the situation. It all depends on what the situation was. But then let it go. And now it's, you know, they need to move through their stuff.
Well,
right? It's like
servantry. And that's one of the reasons why it's difficult for them to let go. They are taught to have this expectation to never trigger anyone, but to also make sure that the other person is okay. So now this creates this cyclical experience where nobody gets off the hamster wheel.
Nope.
Right. And so, like, I love so much of what you said, but I even use that, like, the way you described it, for discernment when we're talking about triggers, right? And so when we're talking about from a spiritual aspect, people have this expectation. Well, discernment tells me not to have this conversation with you. So have you discerned whether or not that is your trauma imprint or if that's actual your spiritual guide telling you that you've already learned this? Have you deciphered that yet?
Wow. Shamika, you opened up a whole other can I don't know if we should walk into.
I can go off on that can too.
Listen, and it connects to what you were just saying, because you sent me there, Amanda, when you were talking about triggers, right? Because that's really what we're talking about at the same time when we're talking about discernment, right? Can you actually decipher the communication that your body is trying to get you to process from that experience? Right? Because if we are simply saying, and then another word that kind of rubs me the wrong way is coping. Every time I hear someone say coping, I'm like, I'm not teaching anybody to cope with shit.
No.
Why do you want coping to be your goal?
No.
Why? I'm not teaching you to sit still in pain. Can we go to the next step and do something about it? Can you identify your autonomy? Can you identify your free will? Can you identify the fact that you have full ability to make a decision for yourself and you are choosing consciously and subconsciously to freeze? I'm not teaching you to cope. I'm teaching you to do something about it.
Yeah. Show up to it for yourself.
There you go. I'm teaching you how to be present in your body with the information that your body and this experience has to offer, so we can invite discernment.
Yes.
Right? Have you accessed all the information before you discerned?
Thank you. Yes.
Or are you simply responding to your trauma imprints that you have not showed up for yet?
Yep. So I'm going to go here. When somebody says, but God told me that's my husband, but God told me this is the path I'm supposed to be on, but God told me I have to wait, but God told me, right? That feeds right into what you're saying, Shamika, where they're trusting, and so what happens here, here's how I see it, is that God told them this was right or wrong. This is what they should do, right? I prayed to God and this is the message that I received. And then you start, okay, maybe I don't use the word God anymore, but now I'm like, well, divine, spirit, source told me that this is what I have to do. And as much as I'm like, yes, I'm also with you, well, has there been some discernment here? Because it's coming through our filter. I don't care what the message is, but that message is coming through a filter. And if we don't clear our filters, it's like the water faucet, right? If we don't take that little piece off that water faucet every so often, put some baking soda on it and scrub it out with some vinegar, like there's gunk there. And the water can't flow freely. The divine messages, whatever that is, whether it's from your guides or whatever, like that, I mean, I'm an Akashic Records practitioner. Like I have to be very clear on the filters I have, that when I'm sharing a message, that it is as clear, like my funnel, my faucet there is clear, because it can be filtered by my own belief systems. And I've seen practitioners do that, where they're filtering it through their own filter and the message is coming out, and I'm like, whoa, very interesting, right? And some people take that because now that's the God that they used to follow, but now it's here in the spiritual container.
100%. Well, a lot of that comes down to this very, very loaded thing of ego versus intuition. And sometimes they ride together. And it's difficult because one will be disguised as another. So it's being able, again, we're speaking of learning into our own body and beingness, because when you're so used to outsourcing things and you don't have that discernment piece. So it's this multi-layered thing of learning how to feel into your body, what your body's telling you, right? It feeds into like muscle testing and all of these different amazing things, but you need to take back your beingness, your body, your power in order to be feeling any of that. And then when something is coming up, I'll often tell people, okay, hold that, and then step away. Give it space, you know, do some woosah woosah, and then come back to it and feel into it again with a different energy, with a more grounded energy. Are you getting the same feeling? What's the feeling that you're experiencing with it? So repeatedly explaining intuition versus ego. What are you feeling in your body and your beingness? It's like giving people the tools, because conditioning, whether it be a really good point, the spiritual community can be just as fucking bad with the gaslighting and the gatekeeping and the bypassing and all the bullshit. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Are you outsourcing your truth? Is this just something else that's disguising itself as your higher self, that's disguising itself as your intuition? Is this truly, if you're feeling any anxiety with it, you're feeling any of that fear base, it's not intuition. So it's feeling into that and letting the person know it's okay to fuck it up. Like, it's okay, especially when you're learning, because people think, oh my God, you need to get this right. How do you learn? You fail forward fabulously. That's how you learn.
Yep.
Oh shit, I thought this was intuition, but it was actually ego. Okay, wait a minute. Oh, I could have caught it there. My body was doing this. I didn't see that in the moment. Okay. Being able to go reflect back for yourself and pull that forward and be like, okay, actually, I was leading with this because I really wanted this outcome. Or, oh shit, I was triggered. And then I went and rationalized and judged it and kind of did this little touch off and then came back to it and just bombed for a second and came up with it. It's like catching yourself, learning from your stuff. But a big thing is that learning between ego versus intuition. And being able to say, I don't know. It's all feeling mashy right now. I don't know. Cool. Okay, that's okay if you don't know. If your discernment is telling you, I don't really know what weighs up. Okay. Wicked. You don't need to choose one, but you need to pull out for a minute. You're too far in. Pull out, take a breath, breathe back into your body and being, and then come back to it. But it's just so much pressure. People put so much pressure on themselves to have to perform in a certain way.
Well, that
because of religious experiences.
Well, it creates so much. Well, the blindness that is created from like religious experience, it creates so much room for dissociation. It creates so much room for connections to not be made, even though they're right in front of you, right? Because you've got this explanation saying, even though you can see with your eyes that A and B connect, I'm telling you that they do not connect. So the issue with religion is it creates this space of conflict where there's no rightness. There's no space where the two actually work together seamlessly. And so people end up spinning in their mind, trying to figure out the world where they could actually just be in the world and use the reality of nature, right? The nature of existence and things that are naturally occurring. So that's the issue with religion, is it by what it is and the way that it does that. I would not be surprised if the person who created the book was a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Let's be, maybe just because of the way that it intentionally manipulates the brain.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
A good
yeah,
point.
you're right.
Right? It just does. Like it's a book of behavior modification.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is fear, manipulation, and control. All conditioning, like you said,
Yes.
like huge conditioning.
Which is psychology, right?
Yeah.
This is psychology has studied this thing time and time again. Yeah. And it doesn't take much to see the blindness that would naturally be created by looking at any one thing. Any one thing. Like, and this is an example that I use in session a lot. I actually had a client walk over to the wall and I asked them, what can you see? Literally, all I can see is the bounds of this paper. Yeah. The further I get it away from me, the more I can see outside. But if your head is in the book, how do you actually experience reality, the truth of reality? This is one of the reasons why you get this natural dissociation from self and everything else. Yeah. Right? You can no longer discern or see clearly. And I don't know about you, but if this is my whole world, of course I'm stressed out when I can see all this was real the whole time. Yep. The whole time.
Yep. I've used the exact same thing, whether it be like with clients one-on-one or on my lives and stuff. I'm like, can you see jack shit? If I'm looking for the notebook, it's right, like, can you see anything around you? No, you can't. Drop that shit. Look around. It's like, but then people do this. It's like they seek something. And you're like, cool, here it is. And they're like, you're like, dude, it's right here. It's touching your fucking nose. And they're still going down, 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 down. Yeah, because it's that training, that ingrained.
Yeah, and it's very deep seated. And if you think about it, like how most people that you talk about now with religious trauma, they grew up in the church. Yep. Right, and you see it from different measures of if they were like the pastor's, children versus if they were, if their family served for the church, or if they were just part of the general congregation. Each of those, they're touched differently by the experience, right? And I think the closer you get to the person who's actually leading the church, they have the greater sense of dissociation, right? Because they're now looking at the expectations of how will my behaviors impact the rest of the congregation? Yeah. How will my behaviors impact whether or not the congregation is going to listen to my father? Mm-hmm. All right, and then you have these children who are raised never knowing what it's like to be heard, because when they go to speak for themselves, if it doesn't align with the textbook, it's closed off at the mouth, right? It never leaves the thought. And so then, they're 30 years old. I actually had this happen not too long ago, where this lady who by marriage didn't realize until her husband filed for divorce that she was in a cult. Oof. She didn't realize it. She just slowly stopped speaking up for herself. Yeah. And then when he filed for divorce, she was like, wait a minute, what have I done with the last 8 years of my life? So it's not even, yes, it happens to adults, but most people, it happens when they're kids before they ever got the opportunity to explore. So all they know is what they're told, right? And you see it on a smaller scale with kids who are going off to college, right? And I've had to coach many parents with this too, or give, therapy, so to speak, where the parent comes in and like, my kid's anxious and they're worried about going to college. Well, you've got 4 years to give them the opportunity to make decisions for themselves. You've been telling them when it's time to clean their room their whole life. You've been telling them when it's dinner time their whole life.
Yep.
Doing everything. Yeah. Doing everything for them as well.
Everything for them.
How
Right.
to think, how to breathe, how to when to breathe.
Yes. Right. So that's parenting is really just a training course for developing individual identity. If you're not giving them
100%.
the time to jump off of shit, it really does affect them 20 years later.
100%. I got a lot of flack from people for teaching my love's daughter, who was 8 at the time, how to do her own laundry.
Mm-hmm.
I got so much pushback from that. She's too young. She shouldn't be doing that. Like, that's not her responsibility. And I'm like, when is she ever going to learn how to do this? There's a day in her life where I won't be there. Her mom won't be there. Her dad won't be there. How is she going to know how to do this?
Mm-hmm. My son is
Like,
12. He cooks full course meals. Right. He's been doing his laundry since about 8 as well.
yeah,
And at this point, if I cook something he doesn't want to eat, he's like, I'm good. And he'll go and get a squid out the deep freezer and clean it and cook it. And I'm like, I appreciate whatever I did, kid. Whatever I did. Let's keep that going.
absolutely.
But in part, it's like when you think about it, I'm not against people raising their children in the church. I think that there are benefits to structure and even things like church and religion. But if we're not also teaching our children or in giving ourselves the space to also function in the rest of who we are automatically limiting ourselves.
100%.
Absolutely. There's a difference between structure and codependency.
Yes.
Yes. And
And many of us are
unfortunately,
codependent.
yeah. And unfortunately, that is a common situation when you're talking about, yes, being born in these days, but also being born into religion. I think if you were going to raise a child in religion, codependency will naturally come with that.
Yep. 100%. Well, ladies, this has been such a beautiful conversation. As we begin to wrap this up, are there any final thoughts or any points or anything that you would like to tell our listener?
I think a big thing is if you are showing up, like when you are showing up in session with people, to always just drop into your own intuitive feelings with something, right? If something feels off, chances are it is. If you feel triggered, show up to that within yourself, right? Like radical accountability first and foremost, always, 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 right? But really trusting the subtleties, because sometimes things aren't obvious. But just allowing yourself to go with the flow with things and ground into it versus feeling like you have to know. Because it's been such a beautiful, expansive journey. Like when I was a counselor versus now what I do, it's similar, but it's more expansive because I brought in the spiritual element and the embodiment element into it. But allowing yourself to learn and grow as you go, because clients sometimes bring up some shit like, what the fuck is this? And being there with that, but that's how we grow as human beings, right? Showing up with each other, and it's no different in our practice of being able to sit with something and be like, hey, but how you show up to client A that has a similar trigger to client B it's going to be completely different because client A and client B are two different people.
Yep.
So holding space in the way that you did from client A, if you show up to that exact way as client B, it might actually cross trigger them more. So how are you going to, step into this? How are you going to be accountable to this? How are you going to move with this? So treating each and every individual client, each and every situation with intuitive flow and embodiment in the moment for the moment, because no two people are ever the same. It's one of the reasons I left the counseling field. I was always in trouble because every individual person is an individual person, even though, these two people might be cocaine addicts, but they're completely different.
Yeah.
How that shows up for them, what their reasoning is, their personal, all of it. So what helps client A is going to hinder client B. So I need to be able to be, flow within that. And it might flow within that one person. This one thing might help person A on Monday, and then in a month, it triggers the ever-loving shit out of them. So being able to hold space for that and be fluid with it, and it's always going to look different and it's always going to be expansive, and contraction happens with expansion, allowing it all to just be what it is. and really intuitively dropping into yourself and showing up to it in the moment for the moment and allowing it to be like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Beautiful. Showing up to it. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
No, yeah, I definitely love that. I love how excited you got in sharing that with us.
I'm just a wee bit passionate on things.
And that's one of the reasons why I love it, because I know when my passion comes out, I probably look exactly the way you just did. I get excited. But what I would say, because your excitement kind of jumped this way too, something that excites me is the medicine that is curiosity. Right? Curiosity is one of the best medicines and things that we can do for ourselves, whether it's curiosity in exploring ourselves or curiosity in exploring things that feel like a trigger or something that we feel like we're being asked to discern about, or curiosity in someone else who's having an experience that is triggering us, right? So curiosity is one of the best medicines. But there was something else that came to mind as I was kind of listening, but I got excited about that, and it went away. All right. But,
welcome to my life.
Well, I was thinking about, as you were speaking, that I literally was talking to my interns about that earlier this week, about how people are different from moment to moment. And if you can sit in curiosity, you'll save yourself so much headache.
Yeah.
So much. Yeah. So true.
Yeah. And being able to show up, in a space where you realize that maybe you don't have presence to give in that way, but you do have presence to give and curiosity. I don't have the ability to share what I'm going through right now. I'm not quite there yet, but I can show up as curious for you.
Yeah.
Right. And in this particular moment, I think being able to tap into the body in itself is an amazing resource library. So like just you saying, Danny, that you actually, function in Akashic records, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about, how have you connected to your own library and the resources that you have accessible there. And so being able to slow down and move in a way as we kind of transition through life, I think gives us so much of a resource itself when we can be curious.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Well, this conversation reminds us that when religious trauma enters the healing space, the responsibility of us as practitioners becomes even more important. And holding space with clarity, boundaries, humility allows people to reconnect with their own agency, with their own truth, their own sovereignty, rather than transferring or seeking authority into someone new. I'd like to thank you both, Shamika and Amanda, for sharing your beautiful perspectives and experience with us today. And if you have found this conversation helpful, we invite you to continue exploring the series and join us in the wider discussions that are happening throughout critical mass community. And with that, my friends, we bring this episode to a close. Thank you so much.